excited today to have on our guest, Danielle Seybold. And she's a psychotherapist and coach who's been training in the Team CBT community. We're happy to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's funny. The very first time I said yes to doing like a podcast video cast thing, I was like, and I did that one, and like when you said, hey, you want to come? There was just like a little blip, and I'm like, oh yeah, that sounds lovely. And then it's been just like the excitement part of it ever since.
Well, that's
Right. I think
awesome.
that's what David always tells us, right, Angela? If it feels a little bit scary, it's a good idea or a bad idea?
Good idea. That's my cue for the thing. Like, oh, that seems a little uncomfortable. Oh, I should, like, yes. Yeah, I want to do that one.
Yeah, that I'm starting to embrace that. I've always been pretty good at like emetophobia and like not having any anxiety because I know how to avoid it. And I'm, finding myself pushing the boundaries on that. And that kind of leads me into my first question. You're talking about embracing that. Was that just come naturally for you? Was like just embracing failure and things that are scary? Was that natural, or was there a journey for you in that?
I'd say yes, and so, I moved halfway across the country for college, not a concern at all. Like, so, the idea of excitement, risk, but the thing that was really hard was the perfectionism and the having the view of myself as someone who's like, really smart and highly capable. And so there were certain kinds of risks to like that facade that were very uncomfortable, and I think would have held me back and I wouldn't have taken them. That's what's really shifted a lot for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
That piece about perfectionism, I could relate to that because there's some things where like I was
Right.
always the wild child. And kids used to call me that, and so there's a bit of that where it's like, well, shame attacking never seemed scary to me because I'm kind of crazy and weird, and I don't really care what people think of my outside appearance, but my accomplishments, I can relate to that, where like that better be spot on.
Yeah, I'm going to do a training. I really better look good.
Yeah.
The therapists or people who come should really think that that was highly competent, like, right, that fear would hold me back from doing what I want to do professionally for sure, if I hadn't radically shifted my, to an approach orientation whenever I feel anxiety or self-image at risk.
How did you have that shift?
I mean, over time in community, people who I respect greatly within the Team CBT community, I think being vulnerable and sharing the fact that they still have that and yet they continue. And so I don't think it was a one-time thing. I think it was a length of time. And I think the shift happened in relationships in community. Yeah.
So cool. That's what, we always like to also kind of start things off with, I know you kind of like a little bit of an interesting story as far as how you got connected with Team CBT. So if you could kind of share that with us, how you first got plugged in.
Yeah, I'm like so lucky. I was in my graduate program, still hadn't even graduated yet, and one of my dear friends said, "Hey, I've started doing this training, and I think you'd love it in particular." She knew that I was an engineer, previously, and then I kind of everyone I trained with, I trained in a really holistic kind of program, and I come in with like a very linear kind of analytical side to me. And she was 100% right, and so I got into a Feeling Good Institute in-person weekly training with Dr. Angela Crum, and it was just like, I was like, oh, this is what I've been looking for. Finally, I'm like, what do I actually do with clients? Like, how do I actually do therapy? And so team was kind of the first real structured approach to therapy that I learned and have been using since.
Hey, go ahead, Daniel.
Go ahead,
Wait, did you want to say something for follow-up? Go for it.
No, I think it's so cool that your background was in that engineering realm. I'm sure you'll get into some other questions about how that kind of has influenced your work, but I'll let Angela ask the next question.
Yeah, I mean, you have piqued my interest, to go from engineering to therapy and life coaching. What was that transition like for you, or what precipitated it?
Well, so I will kind of claim I was doing biomedical engineering. So think about like,
Okay.
psychiatrist studies the body. So, I used to design medical devices. There was like this deep core desire to be of contribution in people's lives. And um, as well as wanting to understand deeply and to create, my experience of being an engineer was like highly creative. It's like so powerful to make a thing happen, and to understand how something functions. And like I'm hoping as I talk about it in this way, you can see more of like the bridges for how this might, kind of move over. And I'd say my real gateway was um, becoming a dedicated yoga practitioner and starting to become a yoga teacher. Um, had me thinking about, like, as I did that, I never really cared so much about like what postures people, accomplished, but it was more of this, you know, being able to shift and learn to put their attention and to hold their attention on places that are useful, and like how this is like impactful for one's life, and just feeling like I really like doing this work on a one-on-one basis where I can be of contribution, not like remotely through my engineering work, but to this person here. And like feeling like there wasn't enough of a map to what to do with the psychological aspect from just like, really studying in depth in yoga. And, circumstances in my own life shifted as I became a parent, and just thinking about what life I wanted to create. Like, there's this term I pull from Cal Newport, lifestyle centric career planning, right? So creating a career based on the kind of life I want to have and what I want to do with my life. And it really, called on me to reconsider my engineering career. But I'll say it was really scary too, because leaving behind, as you can imagine, like if I said I like perfectionism, I like, my ego really liked feeling really accomplished and very special and unique. I cannot tell you how plain it felt to be first a stay-at-home mom going through a program in, a very feminine thing. Like most, like I had been a standout in a place where I felt a little special or unique. It's I actually had to like set my ego aside to let myself pursue my genuine interests in having a life focused more on family, and also having a career focused on like softer skills, and being contribution. And so I'll kind of pause there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That softer approach I can resonate with. I'm very analytical myself, although
Yeah.
I was lazy enough to embrace being a stay-at-home mom, no problems.
Yeah. And again, it's like this kind of, this is the work I do all the time. Like, what's the thing you really want? Is there some part of you that kind of gets in the way or makes that hard, or would come in and criticize? And being like, I really resonate with the Team CBT teachings, like having the courage to be average, right? Just noticing how much life can get pulled off track, continuing to do things to reinforce some old images or rules about what one should do to feel good about themselves, versus like, what genuinely lights me up? Like, if I were to choose freely, what do I want to do with my life? Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, Daniel.
Right. I was going to say, I think I got the sense that it's not only really affected you professionally. I mean, I've seen you in training groups, and I know your high level of team skill, but maybe you could tell us a little bit, Danielle, also about like how teams really affected you personally. I know it's had a significant impact on your personal life as well.
Yeah. Again, that just like boldness to take risks and put myself out there. Um, Definitely from team community, like being able to do a daily mood log and notice those thoughts, and positively reframe what it shows I care about, but then to choose from someplace different,
Hmm.
what actions I want to take.
Yeah.
Decision making forms, you can imagine I'm highly analytical. I love decision making form. Anytime I come to a crossroads about what do I want to do in my life, I get out the forms, and I've kind of added to them, so I've got some additional steps, but I am very much guided personally by using decision making tools that are from Team CBT.
Lots of great tools out there, isn't there, for both personal work and professionally. Um,
Yeah.
you had, in the introduction, Daniel was mentioning how that you're not shy, you don't shy away from being human, and talking about this being average. I wonder if you had a story that our viewers might help to understand that a little bit deeper.
Yeah, well, I'll give you one of like, and this is maybe a cheat because I've been pretty comfortable, you know, with it, like not at risk professionally, but just this week I was out shopping in a store with my 9-year-old son, and we're standing in line. There's some holiday music, and I'm like, yeah, I'm like either humming along. I'm seeing my body's doing right now. I'm kind of in line. Like I'm not like full on shame attacking, but my 9-year-olds are like, stop it. You're embarrassing me. You're gonna embarrass yourself. I'm like, oh, I'm not embarrassed right now at all. Like in fact, I quite like that I feel free and liberated to, you know, enjoy the music and let it move through my body. And I'm really hoping that my kids at some point will learn and embrace this. They see at least it's an option for a way to go through life. Because I feel really strongly about that. Yeah.
Such freedom and just being
Oh
that
my gosh,
average,
right?
right? You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure. I would think that kind of, you mentioned shame attacking, which is something, we'll often do with our clients. We'll go out there and, a list of dozens of ways to do that. And it's probably kind of helped you, like you said, to be able to kind of, embrace your own flaws and imperfections. And I would imagine that helps in the clinical work that you do with your clients as well. But maybe you could tell us a little bit, Danielle, tell us a little bit like, how this has kind of impacted your practice now that you've been training in team for so long. How does it impact or even improve your practice?
Again, I've had teams since before I had a practice, so it's not like I see a pivot point. Like
Right.
a lot of people come and they learn team and they see a shift. I think the things it reinforces that are really aligned with the way I like to work, testing. I don't know, like I don't know, my face, I have such joy. Like you're like, why is she so into testing? For me, like this is what's changing? What would we want to track? And I work with clients, so I do the traditional brief mood survey sort of testing, but I also add, so what do you want to see change? So we'll personalize it. How will we know if what we're doing is making a difference? How do you want to measure something if you're out in the world? And this level of, and this matches perfectly as an engineer. I used to design a product. If it needs to have a specific specification, how will I test it? How will I define pass fail? And so that really flavors the way I'm working with clients in a focused way. But I broaden it out as well. So it's not just let me take some psychological tool that, really is designed for someone else to crunch some data. What data is useful in your life? I consider it kind of a hybrid to almost like bullet journaling, which I actually do with some clients. Right? How can you start to track and notice and it's almost like an awareness or mindfulness tool as well. And not just how you're feeling, but how you're living life, how you're choosing things and relating to life more effectively. Let's see if we can measure that and give you some feedback on it. And I actually get excited. I'm like, I do hope through our work, like, if you want to feel less anxious, maybe you feel less anxious, but maybe you want to feel more anxious because you want to put yourself out there professionally. I don't know. Or maybe you want to celebrate that the usual thing happened in life. Hard external circumstances happened. You're feeling badly, but you're approaching that so differently. You're being kind to yourself as opposed to self-critical. You feel really good about the choices you're making, and so it's testing, I think, in a agenda setting, like really coming from a place of this happens, both in coaching and therapy. Some of those motivations for change are wrapped up in self-judgment, and so I was just working with a teen client yesterday, and I could see like, a little bit of kind of tears coming down as we're getting to some of the harder things. And, telling this person genuinely, I hope that every single thing you and I notice here in this room together, I hope everything you notice as I'm encouraging you to look more into your experience of your life, I hope these all help you feel good about yourself and who you are and what matters to you, because that's what it is to me. Right. And this is a radical shift for most people. Radical shift to think that these, feelings I'm feeling anxious, and that this means something good about me. Start to notice how we are assigned a practice that's, I think very supplemental to team, but not from team. Start to notice how you avoid discomfort in life and to what extent it works. Is it effective at avoiding the discomfort? Does it take you the direction you want or not in life? And I could sense she was starting to beat up on herself as she was noticing things she does. And yeah, whatever you're thinking, feeling, doing, it makes so much sense because it shows me you care about something. And can we just accept you fully? And then if you want to make changes, change from there, but not change because you need to, or else it means something bad about you. Like your sense of wholeness is not on the line here.
Yeah.
It's like sitting with open hands is very important to me, not as a skill or a tool, but as a place to come from as a therapist and as a coach.
Yeah, but that's so amazing because you're coming from the engineering background, so the tempting desire to want to just tinker and fix. I don't even know how you overcome that to sit with open hands.
I will notice if that's going on, and sometimes that's a useful capacity, and sometimes that's a great thing to lead with, but not from a place that would mean that you have to or you must, right? It's like freely chosen, but it's, I mean, it and I'm sure it creeps into my work, Daniel. I'm sure it does when I'm not conscious of it, but I can catch it sometimes like, oh, thank you, mind, for trying to come in and problem solve. Let me set that aside. If we're going to do it, we'll kind of ask permission. Would you like to shift into, just like moving from empathy to agenda setting to methods? It's an invitation and a shift. So it's a tool I can use.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to drag me around behind it. And it's useful. A lot of clients I work with, I'm in Silicon Valley. I work with a lot of engineers and people who have very, lawyers, logical, linear, really like, appreciating the mind for what it's good at and having more choice about when to use that capacity or not.
I love that honing in on the choice, because I think a lot of people feel like they don't have a choice, right? That their emotions just happen, the circumstances just happen. And here we're saying, wait a minute, we do have a choice. You have a choice on what you're thinking. And that may or may not change the feelings, but that's okay. If the feelings stay the same, that's okay, because you can still choose to be your best self or do the thing you want to do. And that's kind of the goal setting in the process versus outcome. We would say there's that one tool in team. And I love that. I think that's so critical. And I've noticed in my own life, when I accepted that I was okay to have anxiety, it was hard to get anxious. That's not true for everyone. I'm not saying that when you accept that's going to get rid of all anxiety. But for me personally, it's been hard now for me to get anxious, to try out new techniques. Like if I want to try something new, it's very difficult for me to make myself anxious.
Yeah. Well, that there's this thing I was taught through many people who work at, Feeling Good Institute. When working, especially with anxiety on a daily mood log, there's like the, percent belief, right? Or percent power. And I almost always split this. Okay, so how, what is your belief in that thought / how upsetting is that? Right? Like it might be true. Like I never want to take away from anxiety the possibility that something bad could happen and replace that with another distortion that something good will happen.
Right.
Like, can we just notice that something good will happen, something bad will happen? Can we step out of that game and accept, I feel nervous because I really want it to go that way. And I know it's uncertain and I have limited control. Like, could we work with that? Anxiety, not the enemy. And it's, oddly enough, when we do this, usually anxiety goes way down, like you're talking about, Angela. But I tell people, if we go in having a fight with this anxiety, I'm worried that you might still just be as stuck. Right? Like, not like this is the magic of positive reframing or, agenda setting, acknowledging the useful and kind of values oriented role that emotions have in life and being willing to, experience them and to notice if the way you're working with them is actually not very effective. Right. So want to change.
You're talking about some powerful acceptance there also. So, sometimes the thought is absolutely true, but how much does it sting? And we could work on that. So
absolutely,
that's fantastic. So I wish we had more time here. We're up to already our last question. Time has flowed by here, but we can ask you one last question. We always like to end off with, which would be if all the therapists in the world were listening, what would be the one thing
and
about
life coaches?
Oh, and of course, the life coaches as well. What's the one thing about team you would like them to know?
That the community is golden, right? Like, so my invitation, I know I'm a busy person. The on-demand kind of thing fits into life easier. Like, I would highly encourage participation in live classes and expecting something really magical can happen through sustained involvement with multiple trainings with, you know, people who are looking at themselves and their clients this way. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Danielle. I mean, I couldn't agree more. I run trainings with a friend of mine, Ingrid, and we were just discussing how we're kind of surprised at how many are like, what's the minimum I can do to like get my levels? You know, we've
Yeah.
had Richard Lamb on in the past, and he does the certification program. And so people get really excited about that. And I too, I can relate to that. I want to check the boxes. I'm very task oriented. I can relate to wanting to just
yep.
get up those levels.
Mhm.
And yet there's this piece about community you gain when you attend these trainings, especially with the group live trainings. And there's lots of them out there, lots of different trainers. And definitely agree wholeheartedly with you that that has been really helpful for me too. That sense of community and meeting. I met Danielle and I've met you and other people through training, and it builds confidence and gives you a place to practice and so much more.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
And yeah, it is. And like just the ability to practice the skills live and get feedback. That doesn't happen in a lot of places. And so really developing skills in relationship, yeah, it's very special.
Well, so sorry that we were out of time. It was great to have you on. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thank you for having me. And it was so fun. And it did go by so fast.
So it goes. But thank you for joining us.
Okay.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.